Hey guys, I'm JC and today we're playing Kodama and Ishai. This is a deck that looks to blink multiple permanents and then gain massive value by taking advantage of Kodama's ability. If you like the deck, make sure to stop by the channel where we have a deck tech discussing all of the included cards as well as the overall strategy. Let's see just how much value Kodama can generate. Alrighty guys, let's see who we're playing today. We have Shirei, Shizo's Caretaker. We have Beledros Witherbloom, and finally we have Zevlor, Elturel Exile. Okay, if we have a look at our opening hand, it's a little risky. Having only 2 lands doesn't guarantee that we do get into Cultivate. We do have card draw available, interaction, some more card draw, and a really great bounce effect. So if we don't draw our 3rd land, we're going to get a little punished here. It's a little risky, but I think we'll risk it. We'll keep it and we'll see how we go. And if it turns out badly, let it be a lesson to you to never keep a 2-land hand, hoping you draw the 3rd one. Alright, and we do draw Farseek for turn, so that's really great. Looks like we're not going to be punished this game. So we'll just play our land for turn, and we'll pass it over to our opponents. Shirei just plays a tap land for turn, and that's it for them. Beledros plays a Yavimaya Cradle for turn, so now we all have forests. That will help with our colour fixing. They're going to pass from there. Zevlor plays a sack land for turn. It sacrifices immediately. They're going to gain 1 life. And they just put an island into play. And that is it for them. We draw a Tatyova for turn. So we'll just start by playing our Prismatic Vista. We'll crack that straight away. We'll find ourselves an island. And let's cast our Farseek. We'll put our Spara's Headquarters into play tapped. And that's going to be us done. Shirei plays a land for turn. Now they cast a Mind Stone. Then they pass the turn from there. Beledros plays an Urborg, so we also have swamps and forests. Now they cast a Bitter Blossom. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 Black Fairy Rogue creature token with flying. And that is it for them. Zevlor plays a land for turn. Now they cast Jacob Hawkham Inspector. Tap, draw a card, then exile a card from your hand face down. You may look at that card for as long as it remains exiled. You may pay 6 mana if you do transform Jacob. And it becomes an enchantment where at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library face down. You may look at that card for as long as it remains exiled. Once during each of your turns, you may play a land or cast a spell from among the cards exiled with this permanent without paying its mana cost. And that is it for them. We draw Tashana for turn. Alright, well lucky we have this Cultivate in our hand so we don't miss our land drop for the turn. So let's cast Cultivate. We'll find ourselves a forest and an island. We'll put the island into play tapped. And then we'll also play our forest for turn. And that's going to be it for us. Shirei plays a land for turn. Now they cast Skullport Merchant. When it ETBs, create a treasure token, and for 1 and a black, sack another creature or a treasure, draw a card. So when it ETBs, they make a treasure. Now they also cast a Carrion Feeder. It can't block and you can sack a creature to put a 1/1 counter on it. And that is it for them. On Beledros' upkeep, Bitter Blossom triggers. So now they lose a life and make a fairy token. They play a land for turn. Now they cast Awakening Zone. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token. It has sack this creature, add colorless. But that is going to be it for the Beledros player. Zevlor starts by playing a tap land for turn. It's going to allow them to scry 1. Then they activate Jacob, so they'll draw a card and then exile a card from their hand. Now they cast a Dimir Signet. And then they're going to pass it over from there. Alright, well let's hope we draw a land so we can cast Kodama next turn. Unfortunately, we only draw Sakura Tribe Elder. So I think this turn we want to try to draw into our land drop. We could certainly cast Sakura Tribe Elder here, but I think we want to get down at least one of our card draw sources. And I think we'll try to get down Cloud Blazer. So let's do that. Now when Cloud Blazer ETBs, we'll gain 2 life and draw 2 cards. There's the land drop we wanted. We also got Springbloom Druid. Let's play that land for turn. And that's going to be it for us. So a little unfortunate we couldn't get Kodama down that turn, but the Shirei player might have actually cast an Edict effect to get rid of it. So let's see what they do here. At least having Cloud Blazer on the field means if they do cast an Edict effect, we can sacrifice that first and keep Kodama around. Because he is really central to our game plan, at least from getting a lot of value quickly. Shirei starts by casting their commander. Whenever a creature with power 1 or less is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may return that card to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step if Shirei Shizo's Caretaker is still on the battlefield. They pass through combat. They sacrifice their Skullport Merchant. That triggers Carrion Feeder and Shirei. Carrion Feeder gets a +1/+1 counter. Now they move to their end step, and that's going to trigger Shirei. We'll see the Skullport Merchant come back to the battlefield. And that's going to gain them a treasure. So their engine's already online for the Shirei player. Nothing too dangerous just yet, but I'm sure it's not going to take too much time at all, especially with 5 cards in their hand. Now when we move to the Beledros player's turn, on their upkeep, Bitter Blossom and Awakening Zone both trigger. So they're going to lose a life and make another fairy. And they're also going to make an Eldrazi Scion token. Beledros plays a land for turn. And they start by casting Zulaport Cutthroat. Whenever Zulaport Cutthroat or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Now they move to combat. They decide just to pass through combat, keeping back their blockers. In their second main phase, Shirei actually sacrifices their Skullport Merchant. That triggers Zulaport Cutthroat, but it looks like we also have a response here from the Beledros player. And they cast Beast Within target in Shirei. So the Beledros player obviously not wanting to deal with the Shirei value and trying to get rid of it now before their engines become too strong, which we definitely appreciate. It buys us more time. Because next turn we're probably just going to get down Kodama, but we won't get any immediate value from it. Now, Carrion Feeder also gets the +1/+1 counter. And that is it for the Beledros player's turn. Zevlor starts by activating Jacob once again. Now they play a land for turn. They crack that straight away. They put a basic land into play. Next they cast a Lightning Greaves. Good protection for their commander. Now they move to equip the Lightning Greaves to Jacob. And then they cast Phyrexian Arena. At the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and lose 1 life. And that is it for the Zevlor player. We draw a land for turn. So this turn we certainly could cast Tatyova, maybe gain some value from our fetch land as well as casting Sakura Tribe Elder and cracking that. But I think I want to get Kodama down while the alarm bells aren't ringing out and there's not too much value on the battlefield, especially because Shirei is off the battlefield at the moment. It is going to be a little risky if we do lose Kodama here, but that's the game we play when we play this deck. And luckily we do have some strong cards in our hand that can back that plan up if Kodama does go down. So let's try that. Let's try to cast Kodama. That goes through. Now we'll play our fetch land for turn. That's going to trigger Kodama. We don't have any lands in hand, so we won't be able to use the trigger this time. But we're not going to crack our land at the moment, partly because it actually does tap the mana. It's a forest swamp. But more importantly, when we do start drawing into our other lands, we can use this to cheat them into play. I don't think I want to go to combat. I think we're going to hold Cloud Blazer back here as a blocker, so I think we're just going to pass it over to our opponents. And we just have to keep our fingers crossed that Kodama survives to our next turn. Shirei starts by casting Mindless Automaton. It ETBs with 2 1/1 counters on it, pay 1, discard a card, put a 1/1 counter on it, and remove 2 1/1 counters from it to draw a card. Now they move to combat. Do they swing with their Carrion Feeder? They can because it can't block, so it doesn't really do much sitting back anyway. Let's see if they go towards the Zevlor player. They are open at the moment. But they do decide to actually keep it back. That's a bit of a shame when a player does have a Phyrexian Arena out. You do want to attack their life total to eventually make that card pretty dangerous for them. But that is going to be it for their turn. On Beledros' upkeep, both Awakening Zone and Bitter Blossom trigger. So I make a Scion. I'll make another Fairy and lose a life. Now they play a land for turn. We're only 1 mana off Beledros coming down. Now they cast Azoni Thousand Eye. That does trigger Zulaport Cutthroat because they did actually sacrifice their Scion token to cast it. Azoni says when it ETBs, create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token for each creature card in your graveyard. And for a black and a green and sack another creature, you gain 1 life and draw a card. So its trigger does go on the stack. They make no insect tokens, because there's no creatures in the graveyard. But importantly, it is card draw for them, and they only have 1 card in hand, so I'm sure they want to refill and be able to use Beledros' mana generating ability. So something just to keep our eyes on. And that is going to be it for their turn. Okay, well we've passed through 2 players' turns. We just have to survive 1 more player with our Kodama out, and we're going to be in a really strong position. Now, Phyrexian Arena does trigger on Zevlor's upkeep. Of course, one thing to note is typically Zevlor decks actually run a lot of removal. That's sort of that deck's gimmick. So we really just got to hope that they don't point anything our way. They play a land for turn. Notably, it is a Manamo, so they can untap a legendary permanent. Goes really good with their commander. Now they activate Jacob. They do have 6 mana available, so let's see if they actually transform Jacob here. It looks like they don't. Now they cast their commander, Zevlor Elturel Exile. Haste, 2 mana, and tap it. When you next cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single opponent or a single permanent an opponent controls this turn, for each other opponent, choose that player or a permanent they control, copy that spell, and the copy targets the chosen player or permanent. Now they move to equip their Lightning Greaves to their commander. Now they activate their Manamo, untapping Jacob. Alright, well that's good news for us guys. They have no mana left, so I think we're actually going to untap with Kodama here. Now they activate Jacob once again. And that is going to be it for their turn. We draw an Acidic Slime for turn. It's actually a really good hit, especially with those Lightning Greaves out there. Okay, well the first thing I think we definitely need to do is start drawing a few more cards so we can generate more mana because we have a lot of expensive cards in our hand as well as our deck. The other question we have to ask ourselves is how worried are we about Jacob, because we do have an answer in hand in regards to Sludge Monster. It can turn it off while it's on the battlefield. Our other option is to actually get Tatiova on the battlefield and get some value from our fetch land, as well as Sakura Tribe Elder and possibly Springbloom Druid. But truth be told, as much as I like drawing cards, I think it might be a little irresponsible to leave the Jacob out there, especially with their Zevlor on the battlefield, where they can cast potentially some big removal spell and then copy it multiple times. So what we'll do is we'll cast Mole Drifter first. We'll pay the full cost for it, because we'd like to keep it on the battlefield for our Ghostway. That goes through. We'll put the Kodama trigger on the stack first, so we can always draw the cards first to see what we get before we cheat it in with Kodama. And we get ourselves a Mystic Reflection and a Somberwald Sage. Oh, well, that's actually a really good ramp piece. So let's put our Sludge Monster into play. When it ETBs, we're going to target Jacob. Next, we'll cast our Sakura Tribe Elder. We'll trigger Kodama. Unfortunately, we can't cheat anything into play here. Now, we'll move to combat. I am going to swing just Kodama towards the Zevlor player. Like I said, we've got to try to make that Phyrexian Arena a bad card as it gets later and later in the game. And Kodama is a big boy, so we don't want to waste those 6/6 stats. A lot of ETB commanders don't pack a big punch, but Kodama certainly does. And with that, we'll just pass the turn over. Shirei starts by casting a Grim Haruspex. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, draw a card. Next, they're going to sack their Mindless Automaton. That triggers Grim Haruspex and the Automaton. So they're going to draw 2 cards here. They're probably hunting for a land because they did miss a land drop last turn. I'm sure they can't afford to do the same again. They do play a land for turn. It is a Witch's Cottage. So when it enters the battlefield untapped, you may put a target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. They are targeting their Skullport Merchant. Next, they cast Leadenmere. They move to combat. Let's see if they attack with anything this time. No, they decide to pass through combat again. And that is it for their turn. On Beledros' upkeep, Awakening Zone and Bitter Blossom trigger. They make a Scion. They make another Fairy and lose a life. They play a land for turn. Alright, well they do have enough mana to cast their commander. But instead they actually start by activating a Zoni. They sacrifice a creature. That triggers Zulaport Cutthroat. We all lose a life, they gain a life. They'll also gain another life and draw a card. Next, they cast a Phyrexian Altar, sack a creature, add 1 mana of any color. I'm sure that's going to be a very powerful piece in that deck. Now they move to combat, but they just decide to pass straight through combat. And that is going to be it for them. Alright, well the Zevlor player does untap here with their commander, so I think we have to brace ourselves. Phyrexian Arena does trigger on their upkeep, so they'll lose a life and draw a card. Let's just keep our fingers crossed that Kodama stays alive. The Sludge Monster may actually attract the attention of some of their removal because they might want to use Jacob. So let's just hope that's the case. We don't mind if we lose the Sludge Monster. Kodama's going to be providing so much more value. They play a land for turn. Looks like they are activating their commander here. And that's exactly what they do. Alright, let's brace ourselves and see what they can throw at us. It's important to also remember that they do have access to that Manamo there, so they can untap their commander and then activate that ability again. And they cast Stolen Goods targeting us. Target opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. Until end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Ooh, that's going to be a nasty one with our deck because we do run a lot of bombs. That does trigger their commander's ability. This could be a big turn for them. So now with their commander, they're going to copy that spell, targeting our other opponents. Alright, the first hit looks to be an Ashnod's Altar. The next hit is the Skullport Merchant that we know was on the top of Shirei's library. Alright, we're lucky last. Let's hope they don't get anything too good from us. Hopefully a ramp piece. An heuristic study. Okay. It's not a big bomb, but it's certainly a very powerful card. Something we definitely don't want them to have. But it could have been a lot worse, that's for sure. At the very least, we're probably going to be able to keep Kodama around for another turn, which is going to be pretty dangerous for our opponents. They also cast the Ashnod's Altar. And no doubt they'll also cast the Merchant as well. Just to stop the Shirei player from having it. And they do. When it ETBs, they get to make a treasure token. It looks like that's it for their turn. They move to their end step. In response, we're going to sack our Sakura Tribe Elder. I'd rather have the additional land rather than waiting to draw into it and getting more Kodama triggers. Put a forest into play. That triggers Kodama, but we don't get to use its ability. And now let's move to our turn. Alright, we draw Panharmonicon for turn. That's actually a really good draw. So I think we definitely want to deactivate Zevlor. because we can't let them cast any more bomb spells. I mean, the last one wasn't absolutely terrible, but no doubt it can get a lot worse. So the plan of attack is definitely going to be to get the acidic slime on the battlefield, take out the lightning greave so we can actually use sludge monster and turn it into a 2/2. The question is, how do we want to do it? I think now is the time to actually get down to Shana, because it's going to give us no maximum hand size and draw us a lot more cards, and we can hopefully get some land drops as well to really start taking advantage of Kodama. So let's do that. That does trigger Ristic Study, but we won't pay. Now let's just keep our fingers crossed that it resolves. The Zevlor player does have blue mana open with a treasure as well, so there is a chance they could counter it here. No, but luckily it goes through. Alright. Kodama trigger on the stack first. Let's draw a lot of cards. Alright, and there's some of the lands we wanted, thankfully. Avenger of Zendikar, that's good. A good finisher. We also have some powerful card draw. Okay, now we resolve Kodama's trigger. Let's put the acidic slime into play. And that ATBs, we're going to take out the lightning greaves. The greaves go down. Now we'll play our land for turn. That triggers Kodama. We'll put our flooded strand into play. Now we'll move to combat. We'll send our sludge monster and our commander towards the Zevlor player. That triggers the sludge monster. We'll target their commander. And that actually causes our opponent to scoop there. That's a little bit of a shame. It doesn't completely shut them down. They just have to remove the sludge monster and then they get all of their creatures back, all of their abilities. But it seems that was enough to shut down our opponent. So that's one opponent gone. Our Ristic Study also goes to exile. So no getting that back. Now in our second main phase, we certainly could try to cast our Spring Bloom Druid here, even our Somberwild Sage or Worn Power Stone, and get a lot of mana onto the battlefield, but our opponents might be scared of our board state at the moment, so I think I'd rather actually keep up Ghostway and protect our board. So let's just pass it to our opponents from here. Shirei plays a land for turn. Now they cast Grave Pact. Whenever a creature you control dies, each other player sacrifices a creature. Alright, that's actually quite a dangerous card with their Carrion Feeder out. At the moment, they can sack up to 4 creatures and actually take out quite a bit of our board. So now might actually be the time to actually cast our Ghostway and try to get Avenger of Zendikar onto the battlefield. Give a lot of bodies, so the Grave Pact doesn't really matter. I think we will respond here. Let's cast our Ghostway. Next, they also cast Midnight Reaper. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, it deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card. Now, unfortunately, we do leave ourselves open here by casting the Ghostway, so no doubt the Shirei player swings in and takes our life total down a notch. So they do move to combat. It looks like Grim Haruspex, the Beast, and the Carrion Feeder are coming our way. So we finally get the Shirei player swinging. We're going to take 9 damage. That puts us down to 28. Now on the end step, our Ghostway triggers. We're going to return all our creatures to the battlefield. And that's going to put a number of triggers onto the stack. Let's make sure that all of the Kodama triggers go on the bottom. Notably, the Acidic Slime can actually take out the Grave Pact. So they might be able to hurt us this turn, but it's going to go away, thankfully. We'll also sludge their Carrion Feeder. Take them off their sacrifice outlets. Because as an Aristocrats player myself, I know how important those sack outlets can be. Let's see how our opponent responds here. Oh, they don't actually respond to the Carrion Feeder. So it looks like they're just letting that happen. Maybe they want to maintain their board state, or they could have possibly just clicked through not realizing what we've done. They are pausing here, so that might be the case actually. That's a little bit of a shame, but it does happen to the best of us. I've done it more times than I can count. So the Grave Pact goes down. Now we're going to draw 2 cards thanks to Cloud Blazer and gain 2 life. Eternal Witness and Teleportation Circle, that's perfect, especially since we can get Ghostway back. Moldrift is going to draw us 2 cards. So we're really riding the value train at the moment. Now Tashan is going to draw us a lot of cards once again. Okay, Mystic Remora, Halpak Piper. We've also got Venser, Cloudstone Curia, a very powerful piece. Alright, well let's resolve our first Kodama trigger. Let's put our Avenger of Zendikar into play. That's going to trigger Avenger of Zendikar and make us a lot of plant tokens. And we have quite a number of lands in hand to get those plants big pretty quickly. Now notably, when all those plants ETB, that's going to put a lot of Kodama triggers on the stack, which is going to let us cheat our lands into play. That's why Avenger of Zendikar is so good in this deck. So let's put our first land into play. We'll lose 2 life to have it come into play untapped. So we can get our Ghostway back. That triggers Avenger to put 1/1 counters on our plants. Let's put our next land into play. That triggers Avenger. Put our next land into play. Get yet more counters. Now the rest of the triggers will fizzle. The next permanent we're going to put into play is our Panharmonicon, so we can double whatever we cheat in next. And here I think we're actually going to cheat in Venser. So we can actually interact with the Beledros player. That puts 2 Venser triggers on the stack. Let's bounce their Awakening Zone first of all. And then we'll also bounce their altar. We're just doing the best we can to prevent their commander from coming down. Now with our next Kodama trigger, we're going to put Eternal Witness into play. That triggers Eternal Witness twice. So firstly we'll return Ghostway. For our second one we'll target Cultivate. For our last Kodama trigger we're going to put Cloudstone Curio into play. And after all that, let's move to the Beledros player's turn, see if they have an answer to what we're doing. On their upkeep, Bitter Blossom triggers. They lose a life and make a Rogue Fairy. Now they cast their commander Beledros. So in response, we're actually going to cast our Ghostway. This may actually cause our opponents to scoop if they know that we're going to be going through all that value once again. And yep, like I predicted, that causes one of our opponents to scoop. Now the Beledros player will actually get a turn here to do what they can, but they certainly can't wipe our board, so I don't know what they could have at the moment that could bring them back in it. We're going to get a lot of plant tokens coming down on the end step. Now Beledros does move to combat. They swing in with most of their creatures. We're just going to have to take the damage. Now they activate Beledros, untapping all lands they control. They recast their Awakening Zone. Next they activate a Zoni, gaining themselves a life and drawing a card. That triggers Zulaport Cutthroat. We're going to lose a life, they'll gain a life. So they are going to be able to draw a lot of cards here with Beledros, but I'm not too sure what they're going to be able to draw into. And actually, our opponent just concedes right there. So unfortunately, we didn't get to go on the value train once again, but that is the game done there, guys. All right, let's go to the review and discuss what happened. So this game ended up being a solid showing for the deck. We got to see the power of Kodama's ability when putting permanents into play in both cheating mana cost and getting multiple ETB effects each turn. We also got to see the raw power of what a single mass blink spell can do with Kodama on the battlefield. When we cast that Ghostway, the value we generated was so incredible that it actually caused one of our opponents to scoop once we showed we could do it all over again. Of all the decks I've ever built and played, Maelstrom Wanderer has typically taken the #1 place in the sheer amount of value it can generate. But after playing this deck multiple times now, I think we may just have a new contender for the Value King. Well, that's it from me today. A lot of you seem to be really enjoying this deck, so if you'd like me to make more gameplay videos for it than I normally would, let me know in the comments. But until then, take care guys.